Today, we're interviewing Sussan Lari, president of Sussan Lari Architect. Sussan Lari Architect is a full-service architecture firm that aims to design and help build functional, comfortable, and beautifully designed spaces for modern living. Sussan Lari Architect prides themselves in maintaining a mindful collaboration with all of their clients, while also accomplishing their goals within budget and on schedule. What a pleasure it is to have Sussan with us today. Sussan, I wanted to begin the conversation with a sort of an open-ended question around the criteria that is normally used to select an architect. I know you and I have had many conversations about this in the past. Most individuals, when they're looking for an architect, they make certain mistakes, we might say, in terms of how they decide to work with an architect, where they decide to look, we could even say. And I wanted to get your take on, what is the correct criteria? How should a discerning individual look for and identify an architect who is the best fit for their residents?
Good morning, John. I think I better start with saying that the mistakes people make in the process of selection, because what is best way is even much simpler than the mistakes they make. Let's say people are looking for lawyer. So they look for who is most kind of reliable, competent lawyer in this particular field of expertise. When it comes, and then they go and maybe interview or not interview. With architects, people, if they're buying or building a house in a neighborhood that they don't know, is not their own neighborhood, they're moving from a place to another. So their kind of concept of connection to the new neighborhood, number one is a real estate agent who found the property for them, or the building department that has to approve that particular, the design for that neighborhood. So they go to these two places. Unfortunately, people don't do diligent research. Or they ask also the friends, their own friends that they have hired an architect to do, which probably that would make the most sense. Real estate agents, in my opinion, they're not necessarily the right they're not going to get the right advice. And also building department they're not even allowed to provide the name of their favorite architects. And who is to judge who is the favorite architect? The approach that people have in recommending an architect is the person who does maybe more project in that neighborhood, or their houses or their design is most popular. Again, is a generic concept. Just, find a list of architects in the area, and you don't have to be living in one town in order to be able to be a right architect for that town. The criteria by which people choose the architect basically is that if this architect could get approval from the building department, that is the biggest concern they have, which is kind of, I never understand that why an architect would not be able to get approval? What is it that they're worried about? Why they believe that that architect has to have an inner connection with the individual? Is there something going on there? It's like, it's just the wrong, in my opinion, approach, because it limits the end result of what they intended to achieve. Interview the architect. Find 4 or 5 architects, go interview them. I think it is more important that the client or the owner, the people who own the property, to feel a right connection with the architect. It's necessary that they understand each other. In what I mean by that? When you drive, let's say, in every towns or villages in the area where I live, which is Long Island, you see similarity between the designs. It's a very, very common language of design. Projects are being repeated, designs are repeated. So if you're looking for a house that you like, and you say that this is the house I want to have, then you may ask that who is the architect of that project. And then for that, you could go to the building department, get the information, find out who is that architect, and then go to that architect and say, I want the same house. And that will never be me, because I never do the same thing twice. So make a decision if you want to have a custom house. A custom house is typically when the house is just designed for you specific in mind. But if you want the look of a particular project, then that will be the approach, to ask who is the architect of the record for that particular house. It's, I've had in few occasions, clients interview me and they decided not to choose me and they go to the next architect. And typically the reason not choosing me is because at the early stage of hiring process, clients have lots of questions about how long it takes, how much you charge, and can I get all the things I want? And if you want to tell them the truth, they may walk out because the next architect may not say the truth. So, truth sometimes hurts. The reality of what we're dealing with, what it takes to design a new house. My approach is so different than I think the type of clients I have are the type of clients that they could resonate with me and they could understand what I'm offering, which is not only how long it takes. I could always answer that question. If they could, how much we charge, we charge flat fee is kind of very, very clear and simple. And quite often I tell my client how much I charge from early on. So if they're just, not with the price range they have in mind, so let's not waste your time on me. But then there are a lot of other factors in the process of design, John, that it matters to me. If like people come with a picture in their head, and if that picture of that particular house is really not right for the neighborhood. I'm not going to do it. And then, but I have reason why not. And if I could convince the client that this is really not a very good idea, let's say a house with a very limited width to have, let's say, 12 columns in the front of the house, it's just not a good idea. So there are architects who would do that. So it's like it's necessary that you as a client or as a customer is not the right word. You and I talked about it the other day. As homeowner wants to do something, do some homework, do some research, have a good understanding of what is your intention, what you want to build. Then start interviewing the architect. Ask them the question about if your ideas or what you intend to do, it makes sense. And then let's also talk about the cost of construction. For example, if an architect is guiding you to, if you have a budget and you come and talk about from early stage of the project that you want to have cut stone and you want to have slate roof and you want to have radiant heat and you want to have a gorgeous garden and your budget doesn't fit, then you need to know at the very, very early stage of the project. So you want an architect who knows the cost of construction. Because when you design, it's done. This is it. You're stuck. And you already paid for the architect for the design. The design has to fit the budget. But also, you want to make sure that your architect has a good understanding of the life that you and your family wants to spend in that particular house. If you're planning to build a house that is going to be your home, it has to resonate with your lifestyle. It had to fit, because what we design impact people's life, John. That impact is huge. People don't know that, but I do. And I know that impact. So we are not intending for custom homes, we are not intending to create a generic design, right? So it's necessary to know what is the lifestyle. And one other aspect that I think is very, very important is, like, I think architect, a truly quality architect, carry a tremendous amount of responsibility in designing the house or a construction. Because I'm very involved in designing, residential projects, so I could at this point talk about that. When you build a house, it stays there for very, very long time. People don't just demolish brand new houses. They don't. The new owner could come and make adjustment to it if they don't like, but demolishing it doesn't happen very often. So the house is going to be there for a very long time. So the responsibility of few, we want to make sure the house that is built for, let's say, Richard, it's just that he loves it. He loves coming back to the house. He loves living in that house with his family. But then at the same time, we want to make sure that the house fit in the neighborhood. We don't want an eyesore. And typically eyesore is where is the lack of connection, visual connection to the house next and to the house next and to the house next. Why incorporated villages have architecture review board? Exactly for that purpose. They want a visual continuity within a neighborhood, a feel of sense of connection between houses with this community. This is another factor of importance in the design process. Then, how the house feels at the site. If the site is large and we never see the house from the road, it's a different story. Then the house you have more freedom. But that again carries a different mindset, both on behalf of architect and the ego involved in these things, and the people who hire them, and they want to stand out. But at the same time, you could say, maybe I really love to have an ultra-modern architectural design. What the heck am I supposed to do? I don't want to live in this kind of awful colonial style architecture, mushrooming up everywhere in, our communities on East Coast, at least, I don't know, elsewhere. And if I don't like that, what do I do? So yes, it's a problem. So anyway, interview few people, ask many questions, be prepared when you look for architect. Ask them to show you their work, not only pictures of the houses. Ask them to show the picture of the house from side and the back, because they only design the front elevation, because that's where people see. Sides are typically less expensive material and is never designed well. And the back, whatever. So, and ask them to show the floor plan. Ask them to show you the furniture plan, how you're supposed to live in those rooms. I think plan matters far more important than the front elevation. It's a design, no matter how creative the concept of design is, but ultimately, design doesn't start from the front elevation. Front elevation is a consequence of a good design. Elevations is a consequence of good design plan and good design volume and good design use of material and good design between the proportion of the windows and the exterior material of the house. So it's just the front elevation is a consequence, is not the starting point. So how could you ever design a plan based on a picture that shows the front elevation? Which is very typical. That's how my competitors do, or my colleagues, or whatever.
The way that you design the flow, the design of the home, as you said, not just the front elevation, but the entire residence, is designed in a very unique way. The position that you take as a designer combines so much in terms of shaping the quality of our modern life and the modern living patterns that we have today. Could you share, in your words and in the experiences that you've seen from your own clients, what are the impacts to their lives that have been a direct result of that?
That's a good flow, a good plan, a good floor plan is a key to a well-designed house. Undoubtedly. Several important criteria. And then we go back again for a second and talk, and we could talk about how somebody should look for a good architect. Look at the plan, look at the floor plans, look at the siting of the house on the property. Look at how we approach the property. Look at how we drive or walk into the property, not the house, into the property. And from that point of entry to the house itself, hire your architect based on those, not the picture. That's where I said people look at the selection process not wholeheartedly and not in depth, because to the mind of people, a good house is a good picture on elevation. That's how they see a good house. We don't live outside of the house, we live inside of the house. Why people driving by and see the house is more important than us living in it? Isn't it weird how we do choose our project? So let's talk about inside. How, I have no doubt, John, that spaces we live in impact our life big time. Big time in a way that it's not known to us because we never look at it, we never pay attention to it, we never see it, we never question it. But it does. If you don't see it, so we don't realize it impacts. How we use our space matters tremendously. How much that space is connected to the outside matters. Where our windows are located matters. What do we see when we are inside of the house and looking out matters. So it's like, and let's talk about quality architect versus not quality architect in my book. If we don't realize where the sun rises, we know from east, but our house is designed to respect the movement of the sun? No.
Most of the time it's built off of, as you said earlier, you know, it's almost like if you go in for a haircut and you say, hey, I like this haircut. Can you give me this?
Yes.
And there's very much well, I've seen the picture of a house that I saw in Home and Garden, and I thought it was a great home. Why do you think that people come from that place instead of from understanding the philosophy that you understand and communicate so well? You know, why do you think that there's that gap?
I don't know, and I honestly, I thought about it a lot. I couldn't figure out and I just bring it to the attention of my clients. And then it's like a waking up moment. Oh, so I don't know why people think that way. I don't know. Maybe it's because how one grows up, how much respect one does for quality living. You have to go through all the criteria. I cannot even raise this question for a majority of the population that cannot even afford to, live in houses. I don't know, John. But at least for the people who really have the luxury of building their own home, we need them to be aware of it, and we need them to pay attention. And it's the experience of the spaces we live in has a huge impact on us. It lives in our memory. When I have my clients, undoubtedly, John, I design houses from inside out. I know from the very beginning, I have all those criteria with my clients that, the kind of language or style of architecture, what they want, I already know. We established that. We know the style of the neighborhood. We know the distance from the road to the start of the house. All of that are set. Then from that point, we put that aside and start designing from inside out. And we have all the setbacks established, follow the zoning and rule. Then we could start. And then the life, you're talking about modern life. Modern life is a very, very important thing here. We live our life today. We live for the moment. This is where we are now. Okay, we are not in the colonial era. So let's just cross out colonial style architecture out of our mindset. Forget it. How do we live now? How do we spend our time? How often are we home? So we could say that we could divide how often we are home into private time, which is typically quiet time, and it's not necessarily sleeping time. Could be reading the book time, could be meditation time, could be, I don't know, reflecting time. I love those times because I seldom have time to reflect, so I value that. And then the time we spend with our family, the time we work in-house, right? So many of us went through pandemic spending a lot of time at home working. Time we have with friends, and then time that we have large gatherings. It's fascinating how much I get to know my client based on the answer they give me based on these questions. Certain cultures is all about large gatherings. They design their house based on parties. Okay, so I'm not judging. That's what they want. So let's design that. You just have to remind them, what about if your child wants to, be quiet? So we need to have that, I don't force my opinion on my clients. I just bring this subject out. That is so important. I'm designing for them and with them. So, but if I don't ask this question, they're not necessarily going to think about it. And then when we set those and we create a list, then the design starts. And we have public area and we have private area. And the public area doesn't need to be interconnected. Yes, because we don't want room. People don't live like that anymore. We no longer cook alone in a kitchen, it's just we all we have a communal life. And that communal life quite often is also, the social people who are, have friends around. Some cultures, there are always a bunch of people at home. So how can we design a space that is all open to each other, and one is cooking and one may be watching TV and one may be talking to a friend in a corner? It's just the ways of doing that. So, and then the connection of indoor to the outdoor, the use of material. John, I cannot tell you the importance of use of natural material. Well, it's so much involved in designing homes, and it's so sad that quite often, even very, very expensive homes are built based on, a front elevation and a floor plan, and nothing else has been think about it. Nothing. And it's our life. It's our life. So sad.
Well, when you talk about material, I think that plays such a huge role.
Yes.
Because I think one of the things that I admire about your approach is the level of involvement that you take into sourcing material that fits.
Yes.
That actually fits for the home, for the experience in that home, versus, as you said, designing for driving by in the neighborhood and trying to impress with the front elevation, rather than saying, what is the quality of life that I will have living in this space? And I think one of the amazing things that you brought up a few weeks ago was talking about how most of us now we're working or operating from home a lot more than we were. Even if it is going to the gym, we're doing our yoga or Pilates at home. We're doing, we're stretching in the morning, we're meditating, right? And the thing is, we're trying to fit a square into a circle hole. We don't, we're trying to force something to fit into a space that is actually not designed for that. As you said very well, going back to the colonial style designs, what were those, what world was that made for? That the more that we learn about the high end thinking that you place into your designs, and the way that you mindfully select material to actually make the home a residence that you can actually live your life in. It's not just a place that looks beautiful from the street, and then you walk around the side or you go to the back and there's no flow for the lives that we live in our modern lives. As you've talked about, do we have a space to reflect, to meditate, or are we bumping our elbow on the ottoman when we're doing our yoga in the morning, right? Are we trying to fit something that doesn't, something that's so important to us into a space that does not allow it?
That's where when we could build our own home, it's a tremendous amount of luxury, because we could think about all of that. In 2 ways, I could really provide my clients a house that they empower living in it. that will really improve the quality of their life in a true sense of quality improvement. The first one, when I do a brand new house, okay? Because we think about all of that, we talk, and then we make our clients to think about it and come back with program and come back and tell me how they spend their time. Who cooks in the house? Is the cooking happening there? How do they use the space? How do they socialize? All these questions are the questions that I ask. And then they have time to think about it. And then they come back and we create a list together. And then they have time to think about the list. And then when I have all this information, the design began, right? Again, from inside out. And then we also have an opportunity to, when we do a gut renovation, so we have the same level of opportunity, but much more limited because we're dealing with some existing structure. But let's talk about the material and how, for example, let's say somebody is looking for a more modern house and now they purchase a piece of property in a neighborhood that has a lot of very traditional old houses there. I've had clients like that. I've done enough projects that I've seen many different possibilities. A case like that, we take the use of material, John. On the inside is different. We have much more freedom. But when we are designing the outside, let's say if within a neighborhood, the majority of the houses are either cut stone or brick, or let's say wood, which is very, very common, use of material. And then you could actually use all those material, but the setting of it, the proportion of it, to be used in a more modern design approach. So it's not that the cut stone is like only good for traditional style architecture. Cut stone could be completely used if the proportion. So because I'm heavily involved in the selection of material, and I have the freedom. My clients provide me the possibilities I ask for, and they give me to choose the material. So I choose the material, and I'm very much believer on local material. Windows are not local, but material has to be local, So local stone yards, and choose the color of the stone. We have the possibility to request the size and dimensions of those cut stones. In one of my projects in Elderfield, in Flower Hill area, my client wanted a modern architectural design. So, but then the material of the neighborhood was cut stone and wood. We said, okay, brick we don't want. We could use cut stone and wood, but the use of the cut stone material was selected long and narrow cut, 5.5 inches, 3.5 inches, and 2 inches, all horizontal grout line. And the result is pretty modern and fit in the neighborhood. It's not an ISO. Of course, we had, because the design was more modern designed, call it modern classic. That's probably what I'm known for. And then the architecture review board, they didn't like it. they said they used the word, I forgot. What was it? I didn't know the meaning of the word in this particular implication. And they were just kind of insulting a little bit, but because I didn't know the implication of it, I didn't think much of it. And then now it's one of the most popular houses in the neighborhood. But it's just because it's not overly decorated. When you design a more modern architecture, is on drawing is simpler. And therefore, doesn't fit the language of traditional architecture, which is a lot of volume, a lot of, decor. So, and yes, you could do that. And you could do it really well if it's designed well. The material selection are incredibly important, because I also believe in the responsibility we have as architects to choose material that has to be green and has to be natural. And if we are using material that is within, the community or the area, and it's doesn't have to arrive by plane or from far away, certainly we are helping our environment. So how could we not be involved in the selection? I'm always at awe with the architect that they leave the selection of material to the contractor.
Which in many cases, I think around that, and I don't know if you would agree with me, but I think there could be a huge conflict of interest.
Well, when I don't want to say, I could only talk about my other colleagues. I don't want to talk much about builder because I don't have much good to say. I get upset. And I don't want to criticize anybody. Let's just talk about what is good to do. I think it's very important that architects have full control on the design and the selection of material. And they have to be involved in specification of material and the source of material. And of course, builders have more knowledge where to buy material. And so that's why, they could have, but why architect, residential architects should step up. They should increase their knowledge. They should learn more about the construction material, at least for residential architecture, if they're not interested in anything else. You cannot only sell floor plans and front elevation. That's not a good idea anymore. It should not be an instrument in the hand of builders. They have far more responsibilities. They have a voice and they should use it. But you could only have a voice if you have a knowledge, if you know what you're talking about. And then that's when the builder becomes responsible or in charge of using material. We know the end result. Because it's a business. Builders is a business. Architect is a profession. So business is better if we buy from a place where we could keep buying and keep buying and keep buying, and we buy the least amount of expense, and we may transfer it to our clients, we may not. I'm speaking as a builder. But then conflict of interest is really big time there.
Your involvement in the build process and your connection with the design all the way through to completion. Can you share a little bit about what your involvement is and why you choose to be that involved in the process.
I chose to be that involved because what I was designing was not being implemented. At the beginning, I wasn't that involved. And that was not going to be the case. What's the whole point of client pay me a design fee and it, relatively higher than standard architect of the area, and then not get done the way it's designed? What's the whole point? And why is not being built according to the design? Because I think the two factors in this process of construction. There are a lot of quality contractors out there, undoubtedly. And many of them are the ones who built my houses. Okay, I'm not building the house, they are building it. I'm involved with them. Okay. Because I have learned that quite often the builders that built my early project, no matter how good they were in the construction, in actual performance of the work, well, yeah, relatively good, but they were not good in two things, in my opinion. One is managing the project, and two, planning ahead of time. If you really want that particular stone I told you about, and if you want this particular window that we want, you have to plan ahead of time. You cannot wait to the very end when you want to install something to think about it. And then telling the client that, that material is not available, so let's just change it. No, let's not change it. Because to them, it's irrelevant. If you know the importance, John, you make sure you do it right. To the builders, bottom line is they build a house, people like it, and they make their money. It's a business. Quality they don't see it. They don't see the difference between this brick and that brick. And here I am, and I said, no two bricks are the same. They're saying, yes, it is. I said, no, it's not. Maybe I'm seeing something they don't. Maybe they're innocent in their approach. It just they don't know better, or they don't know the way I see it. And I thought that, okay, so they're not going to get the material on time. So I make sure, how much am I involved? I'm only involved in the areas that, in my opinion, matters. What are those areas? Material that matters needs to be ordered way ahead of time, so we handle the ordering. So if certain windows matter to me, I want those windows to be ordered way ahead of time. How could the client understand the difference between this door manufacturing and that door manufacturing? It's not their job to know that. Then, are we always relying on the integrity of the builder to choose the right door? And the same thing applied to lighting. These recessed downlights we have in our ceilings that, typically the electrician call it general lighting. So it's like, where did they buy this? To them, all looks the same. But they're not the same. Who knows the difference between them? I do. I made sure that I learn it all. Are we responsible only for 1 year and we are out and the hell with the rest of it? If it lasts only 1 year, after that is irrelevant? And then, you know how many years I had to learn for every aspect of the construction? So I would use those materials only. Maybe because I care and others don't. I don't know. But materials matter big time. Why we choose this window versus that window, why we choose this door versus that door. And because we know, then we could tell our client, these are the reasons. And then this concept of, it's a horror story, John, when I started to learn about the construction material and how much these materials are not being vet and how much harmful elements are in these materials. And then how far behind we are from our European counterpart, that they are incredibly advanced in vetting the material, and in America we don't. That's another big subject to talk about. And why is only recently that organizations has been created within, AIA to vet the material. We just learned years after that. We learned about asbestos. Oh, okay. And then we learned about paint colors. Oh, all right. There's so many others we don't know. So imagine the level of responsibilities we have choosing those materials. So you have either conscious or you don't. You want to build well or you don't. I don't know. A lot to